Hey everyone, super excited to be with you today. Today's episode is all about how and why I launched Growth Public Schools, which is currently going into year 7, and it's super exciting. I've been spending the week with the teachers that have come back this week, and we're currently at a kindergarten through 7th grade and adding 8th grade next year. So we're almost at a full build out of the vision that I originally created back in 2015. Super exciting. And I wanted to take this opportunity in this episode to also do a pivot and share why I'm changing the name of the podcast and the focus of the podcast. And then I want to go a little meta and talk about how I create and what I follow to end up in these places. Because you've heard me, if you've been listening to me now for a while, you know that I really espouse and try to embody this belief that you should follow the trails of the breadcrumbs from the inside out and trust your intuition, trust your leadership gut, trust your own inner wisdom to chart and navigate the path of your life. So the new podcast is called Changemaker ED. And the idea behind it is that, I originally started with the Mindful Education Warrior. And that was my deep belief in the fact that you as a change maker need to really go deep within yourself, do some inner healing, find your inner compass, find your purpose. And we did a lot of exciting and cool episodes, at least I think, about that. And as I was kind of reflecting and sitting with where the podcast is at after 20 episodes, and again, also trusting my own unfolding, I realized that there's a bigger, more expansive mission that's coming through me. And so, again, this whole time, about 5 years ago, I started having this real clear vision that I was creating a Changemaker academy or school or university for educators that want to really change the way we're doing education. And when I say the term educator, I also mean parents and community members. I don't mean you have to have a credential or a master's or a degree in education. I mean people that want to create grassroots change within the education system. And so I've been kind of waiting for the right moment to really launch this passion of mine. And I thought it'd be interesting today to talk about how I started Growth Public Schools and how that came through, and then where I am with this redux of the podcast and also this new movement that I'm launching right now, right here with y'all. So Growth Public Schools, I told this story a little bit before, where after doing my master's at Stanford and leaving corporate banking, living in Washington, D.C., pretty much on the path to be a very well-paid corporate banker in retail and institutional banking, which is not investment banking, right? So it's 9 to 5:01. I always joked how everyone was out of the office by 5:01, 9 a.m. to 5:01 p.m., right? And so it's a pretty good lifestyle. But there was something within me when I was 29 years old that told me that is not my direct path. It's not that, right? And so I changed everything and I applied for grad school and across the country and decided to attend Stanford for my master's and my teaching credential with the explicit vision to help create change in an education system that I really felt like failed me. That, growing up in a suburban Southern California area with good schools, quote unquote, good schools, well-funded, that I was lost in the system. I didn't receive a lot of support. Nobody knew my name. I could go on and on for that. But it's a real deep passion for me growing up low income, helping kids that don't have all the resources is a big passion of mine. So that is how Growth Public Schools was launched. So after I went to grad school, I then decided that I wanted to teach. The original idea was that I was going to go to grad school to get into education policy and try and create change from a more systemic, political policy kind of framework. And once I got into the classroom, I fell in love with teaching and kids and schools, and the story from there. So I ended up working at Summit Public Schools and launching several schools with them as a teacher and a principal and executive director, chief of school. So I climbed the ladder and had this amazing career with them. And then fast forward 10 years later, and now I'm 39 and I'm ready to embark upon this journey of opening growth public schools. Now, what's really important to understand is that I can't remember when I told the Tahoe moment or the mountaintop moment, as my team says at Growth Public Schools. Basically, I felt this calling when I was sitting with my son, literally on top of the mountain in Lake Tahoe. It was a beautiful day. And that was when I think that was the beginning of my journey of trusting the inner wisdom of my soul. And I had this intuitive feeling that it just literally said, start an elementary school. And I say it because it's just the flow of life. Started an elementary school in Sacramento. And then there was a little flutter about and build a leadership institute. And so I'm starting to kind of get clear on what that leadership institute is now. So it was from that moment that I felt very, very clear that even though I was in line to be the successor or the CEO of some version of an executive, moving up that ladder even more within Summit, that I felt like I had to basically follow this calling. And so that's what I want you to hear today. And that's why I'm launching Changemaker EDU, because we all have a calling within us that's bigger than the limitations of our egoic mind, the safe, controlled, safe structures that we live in most of our lives, right? I took the courageous leap to say, I'm leaving the secure, well-paid job. I had young children, a mortgage, but it was such an inner calling that it was a choiceless choice. I didn't really have a choice but to follow. Now, it took me a long time, not a long time. It took me a while, several months to really negotiate and reconcile that choice. Even though the choice was made for me, this is what I want you to hear. The choice is made for you when you listen to the whispers of your soul and you listen to the flow of life and you listen to a higher calling. So I made that choice. It was very traumatic for me, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And that's when I began the journey of launching Growth Public Schools. And what I want you to hear is Changemaker U is going to be about that whisper within your soul, that deep calling within you that wants to come forward to create lasting impact in our education space. This can be in various formats, okay? What I know for certain is that part of my calling, part of my purpose on this planet is to help people get out of the box and to help people be more free and to start creating different types of systems and ecosystems within the education space. I know for a fact that the Leadership Institute message and calling that I got, which I've been receiving for several years just in my meditations and in my conversations, and just it's this intuitive knowing that there is a movement that I'm spearheading and creating. And when I say spearheading and creating, I mean there's a big team that's helping do this. And we are creating a movement for a grassroots change of the education system. Okay. So that means that I don't know what that looks like. It's another thing I want you to understand. When you get that feeling, you don't know what it looks like. Now, your mind is going to try and create a very clear, step-by-step structured process. Like, okay, I create an LLC and then I, go get funding and then I hire a team and then it's about this, and whatever it is for you, you're gonna feel like, okay, what are all the steps, right? Because that's human nature and that's the mind doing its thing. So your job is to slow down, take a step back, get up on the balcony and view things from a higher perspective and start to say, I don't know how this is all going to unfold. Last time I checked, most people don't know how to predict the future. Maybe you can get like a little bit, you can work with someone who understands that. But my point is, we don't actually know what's going to happen. So let's stop trying to control it all. So I'm opening up to the infinite possibilities of what Changemaker EDU could look like. But I understand the vision. I understand the basic concept, which is furthering the vision I had with Growth Public Schools. So I had 2 years to envision and to dream about what Growth Public Schools could be. And I did so much writing and thinking and researching and talking and working with amazing education reformers across the country. I think I visited something like 40 schools and met with folks like Ted Dintersmith. I almost had a meeting with Sir Ken Robinson, may he rest in peace. But I started connecting with like real big visionary thinkers about what we could be doing with education. And I always knew that Growth Public Schools was going to be more expansive and impactful than one school. Not that it isn't amazing work we're doing and the amazing team we have there and the lives they are touching and changing and influencing and supporting amazing kids, amazing families. I'm not undermining that at all. I'm just saying the feeling that I had was that this was going to be a movement within the grassroots. And I want to make sure you hear that too, because I believe that each and every single one of you listening has something that wants to come through you. And now I didn't mention this earlier, so let me mention it now. That could be something as simple as like, I know I need to change schools. I need to find a classroom that's more in line with my philosophical beliefs about the future of education. That could be, I want to launch my own micro school that's going to completely reimagine the way school is done and get outside of the bureaucratic confines. I want to become a principal. Whatever it is that you're a parent and you're like, I want to homeschool. Whatever it is that's coming through you, this is an individual and collective movement, meaning that individually, I'm going to inspire and encourage you to get clear on your individual calling. Mine was launch Growth Public Schools, leave the bank at 29, leave my executive job at 39, launch Growth Public Schools, and to follow that calling, to follow that truth. So what is yours? What is your truth that is waiting to emerge from you that I guarantee you, okay? When you get quiet, you sit still, you pray, meditate, engage in conversation with like-minded people that are also accessing a much bigger field and space and flow of life that's telling you something more than what you can just see with your eyes, the unseen, beyond the five senses. When you can tap into that and really tap into the wisdom of your soul and get clear, you can start to follow those breadcrumbs. So I want to help you get clear on what it is for you. And this movement that we're building will then help us understand, okay, we're not doing this alone. It's an individual and a collective movement, meaning you have to get clear individually on what your calling is. And then you can act a little bit at a time to then understand, okay, who's helping me? Who's involved? For me, I'm in the stage right now where I'm saying, okay, for a long time, I was not ready. So you have to assess readiness. I got clear, honestly, when I was launching Growth Public Schools, I kind of was getting clarity around like, this is a movement and this is, and I thought it was going to be this is where I think it's important. You're going to have these thoughts. You're going to have your mind is going to think that it can predict the future. So I thought, and it's going to work within models that it already understands. So I thought that I would follow the Summit Public Schools model and a lot of other charter schools that I had been involved with, in terms of my friends and colleagues, where you start a school, you build the kind of franchise model, and then you replicate it. The funding ecosystem is set up. And so I had kind of gone to funders and to my board and others saying like, we're going to become a community school, K-8, maybe a K-12, and then we're going to replicate those across Sacramento County over the next 5 to 10 years. And honestly, that could still happen. But I thought that was happening in 5 to 10 years. My mind then said, okay, create all the plans for that. I can control all of this. I know exactly how this is going to play out. Now, in between there, because the school launched in 2017, there was COVID, obviously, big one. And there was also a very anti-charter legislation that was passed in California. So those two massive contextual events, even if I wanted to continue that plan of opening multiple schools in 5 to 10 years, it was not even that. It was much more difficult. And I'm a believer, and if it's meant to happen and it's your calling, it will happen. So even with those massive contextual events, if that was the exact direction I should be going, it was going to happen. Maybe the timeline would have changed. But as things progressed and went on, I realized that it was not that timeline. I had my health breakdown, as I've told you, and I realized that I didn't have the capacity as a human being to try and push this vision and this change. And so I needed to take some time. And I went through a massive inner transformation. And through that, through the last 5 years of my massive inner transformation, I now feel a readiness. So you have to ask yourself, are you ready? And if you're getting a full body yes, that you want to do this, then it becomes time to discern and decipher and ascertain, how will this play out? And again, you don't need to know, you just have to kind of understand how to follow the breadcrumbs and to follow the intuitive messages and the knowing that you have within your heart. So for me, I am really focusing on what's the next step. And I always ask myself, how can I serve today? It's always about service for me. And I've known that forever. I've always had that knowing. So as you get to know yourself, as you get older and whatever age you are, you really start to understand things that you've always known. And it just takes you a while to trust that. So I want to encourage you to really trust what you know about yourself. And for me, I've known that it's always been about service. I remember telling my friends at the bank in DC that I wanted to go work in urban schools and help low-income kids and really reform and reimagine education. And they were like, gosh, you're always talking about how you want to serve others and you're not worried about making money. And it's really about service for you. And I'm like, yeah, that's just who I am. And they were really complimentary about that. And it helped me see that that was my path, right? It helped me take that really scary leap to walk away from the high paying, secure job and to follow this calling that, the amount of pay cut that I took going from the corporate bank to paying $50,000 for a master's degree and then going to Oakland public schools and making $37,000. It's not logical, right? But it all worked out. It all worked out. So what is your calling? What is your knowing of how you want to really create change in the education space? So what I envision, and I can see this so clearly, and this is the Leadership Institute piece that I felt when I was up on the mountaintop, is that we're going to come together and create the change from the bottom up. We're going to have, like I said, micro schools. It could be an after school program. It could be a weekend workshop. It could be an online program, whatever. Again, the form is going to be given to us through this process. And similarly with Changemaker EDU, the concept is it's really like a university and it's a gathering place and a community for education change makers. And so I don't even know what the content's going to be. I know there'll be courses and there'll be community groups and there'll be healing circles and there'll be circles of change makers and different concepts and forms like that. I don't exactly know. I'm going to let it be shown to me and unfold organically. So there's a real power when we can start to trust the organic unfolding of life. So get clear with what it is that wants to come through you. Begin to trust it. Take your time. It's now been 5 years for me for this next phase of growth public schools and my vision of having a larger impact in the education space. And I want you to understand that nothing is too small, right? So if you're literally like, I want to homeschool my 2 children, that's my education change making. That's what's coming through me. And that's my purpose right now. 100% yes. Follow that. Okay. Don't trust what Martha Beck calls a collective other, where people are like, oh, well, you can't just homeschool your 2 kids because you were a principal and you were impacting 400 kids every day, whatever feels true for you. And I think I think it was 2 episodes ago, I talked about really not looking for external validation, but really trusting your own inner validation. So if it is homeschooling 1 child or 2 children, or if it is literally writing letters to your school district, whatever wants to come through, begin to trust that. And we're going to create a space here for you to not only trust that, but then we're going to support you working through that. If you want to, whatever your change is, we're going to support you in working through that. We're going to offer you a community. We're going to offer you resources. We're going to offer you the inspiration so that you can actually build your dream and make it come to life. That is one of my superpowers. is taking a big abstract concept and making it come to life. And again, I love it when these things are reflected back to you. Someone reflected back to me in a podcast interview that I was participating in, not interviewing. I was the person being interviewed. And they said to me at the end, they said, your tagline should be going from something like going from dreams to reality, helping people turning dreams into reality or something like that. And so that's the essence of Changemaker EDU, is to help you embody, create, bring to life your dream of education change making. Whatever it is. There's no too small, too big. Your mission is massive. Whatever it looks like on the outside might not feel like it's massive, but it is massive. And I'm here to tell you that we need to all come together, locked arm in arm, and start to reimagine our education system. But we need to do something to offer better options to our children, because education is one of the places that has not changed for 100 plus years. And it's time. I'm done. There's a readiness here. There's a full body yes. When there's a full body yes, you got to go. When you know, you go. So I know I go now. I'm relaunching this podcast. It's going to be called Changemaker ED, quote unquote you. So I'm playing around with that name. And please join me in sharing this with others. I don't know how it's all going to unfold, but I'm clear on the purpose, the vision, and the values. And the values are creating schools, programs, other options, helping kids be in environments that are more creative, autonomous, and we got to get away from the command and control factory model of 1920. Okay, we no longer need to produce kids that are empty vessels that will go work in a factory or a top-down corporate environment. We need to help kids become the best version of themselves, and we need to see the infinite potential in every single child and create an environment where that potential can be unleashed in a way that we change the world together. So if you're with me, if you're ready to be part of this movement, to create the change that we need to see in multiple ways, I'm here to serve, to facilitate, to hold the space, to create the space, and build this movement to start showing people that there are multiple options, and it starts from the inside out. So get clear with who you really are, what you believe. So this podcast, this kind of redux, is really about leadership development, personal development. And personal development is a very broad term, but it's in terms of your own life, how you're building habits, how you're clear on are you self-aware? A lot of the things I've talked about around mindfulness, I'm just broadening that a little bit more to personal development. So if you're not really into the mindfulness piece, that's okay, because there's a lot of other options that we're going to offer for you. So the thesis of the podcast is we're helping you get clear with that leader within you, develop personally in terms of building your own, growing and learning and getting better as a human. And that's going to help you launch something from the depths of your soul instead of launching something from the ego-driven status, wealth. I think I should do this because it sounds good, or because I'm supposed to, or because my parents told me to. We're going to help you launch something from your heart, from your soul, from what you really believe. And again, launch could be anything, so don't get stuck on that word. All right. Thank you for listening. And I'm also going to be bringing on some really awesome guests that have walked this change-making path of opening cool schools or creating different programs, and kind of understanding from them, how did they go through their process of creating this change on the outside? What was their inner journey to create the change on the outside? So I'm excited about this change. I hope you are too. Let me know. Reach out to me at david@davidkrichards.com. Let me know how it's resonating with you. And I look forward to working together and building this community. Thanks, everyone.